Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we really get into the nitty-gritty of these earnings calls.
That's right.
And today we are talking Anovio Pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
Their Q4 2024 earnings call. A lot to unpack here. As always, you like to start with the top-line numbers first. Just paint a picture of, where they ended the year.
Sure. So, they reported a net loss for the fourth quarter of $19.4 million, which is 65 cents per share. And then for the full year 2024, a net loss of $107.3 million, or $3.95 per share.
Okay, so still in the red.
Still in the red, yeah. But, I think the thing that really pops out at you when you look at the numbers is that operating expenses actually decreased pretty significantly.
Oh, okay.
So in Q4, they were down to $20.5 million from $27.5 million in the same period last year. And for the full year, they were down 22% to $112.6 million.
So pretty substantial cut in expenses there.
Yeah. And they ended the year with $94.1 million in cash equivalents, and short-term investments.
Okay.
Which they say will fund operations into the first quarter of 2026.
Okay, so at least they've got, a decent runway ahead of them.
Yeah. And I think the takeaway here is that they're really trying to manage their cash carefully.
Right.
As they move towards, a potential commercial launch of their lead drug candidate.
Okay, and speaking of that lead drug candidate, that was obviously a major focus of the earnings call, INO 3107.
Right.
This is the one that everyone's been watching.
Exactly.
It's for recurrent respiratory papillomatosis.
RRP.
Yeah, RRP. So give us the key updates on that program.
Yeah, so the big news, I think, was that they finally resolved those manufacturing issues that they were having.
Oh, right.
With the single-use array component of the Selectrad device.
Yeah, that was a big overhang on the stock for a while there.
Right, exactly. They had some design enhancements and some process refinements.
Okay.
And testing confirmed that, those changes worked.
So that's a big hurdle cleared then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's next for them, in terms of getting this drug to market?
Well, the next step is the FDA required design verification testing for the handset.
Okay.
And the array combined. They expect to finish that in the first half of this year.
Okay.
And then they're planning to start a rolling BLA submission in mid-2025.
Okay.
Which they expect will take about 3 to 4 months to complete. And they're aiming to have the FDA accept the filing before the end of the year.
Okay, so end of 2025, potentially, we could be hearing about an approval.
Potentially, yeah. And they're also going to request priority review.
Oh, okay.
Which, if they get it, that could really accelerate the timeline.
Okay, so they're really pushing to get this out there as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And they're also planning to start a phase 3 confirmatory trial for INO 3107. Actually, they get their IND update.
Okay.
And that's going to be a randomized placebo-controlled study.
Okay.
At, they said, about 20 major U.S. medical centers.
Okay.
And this is for patients with 2 or more prior year surgeries.
Got it.
So really targeting those patients who are, most in need of a new treatment option.
Right.
And they already had a pre-BLA meeting with the FDA earlier, and it sounds like they're on the same page.
Okay, good.
On the non-device module, so they don't expect to need another pre-submission meeting.
That's always good news. All right, so let's dive into the clinical data now, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make or break this drug.
Exactly.
So what do they have to share there?
Well, they presented some pretty impressive data from a retrospective trial called RRP 002, and this had a median follow-up of 2.8 years. And it showed continued improvement in patients even beyond the first year of treatment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the complete response rate, meaning patients didn't need any surgery for a whole year, that actually increased to 50% in the second 12-month period.
Oh, that's great to see.
Yeah, it is. And the overall response rate, which includes patients who had a 50 to 100% reduction in surgeries, that went up from 72% in year 1 to 86% in year 2.
So a pretty significant jump there.
Yeah. And the mean number of surgeries per year also decreased dramatically.
Okay.
Before treatment, patients were averaging 4.1 surgeries per year. That went down to 1.7 at the end of year 1.
Wow.
And then down to just 0.9 at the end of year 2.
So more than a 75% reduction overall.
Exactly, yeah. And there was also some really interesting immunology data published in Nature Communications.
Okay.
That really supports the mechanism of action here. They showed that INO 3107 drives an antiviral immune response in airway tissue, and that this response is correlated with a reduced or eliminated need for surgery. Basically, the drug is training the body's own immune system to fight off the virus.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. And it seems to be working. They also, they talked about the safety data from the phase 12 trial, which has been published.
Right.
And it shows that the drug was well tolerated. No one had to stop treatment because of safety concerns.
So far, so good on that front.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So they've got, this potentially game-changing drug for RRP.
Right.
What are their plans for commercializing it?
Yeah, so they're in the midst of that planning right now.
Okay.
They highlighted the fact that RRP affects something like 14,000 people in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really tough condition to live with.
Yeah.
You get these papillomas growing in your respiratory tract.
Yeah.
Makes it really hard to breathe, to speak, to swallow.
Right.
And the current standard of care is just repeated surgeries, which, obviously comes with its own risks. And it's a huge burden on patients.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
No, not at all. So they believe INO 3107 has a lot to offer these patients.
Okay.
We talked about the clinical benefits, the durability, the tolerability, and it's also a really convenient dosing regimen.
Oh, okay.
It's just given in an office setting. Patients don't have to go in for scoping or surgery during the dosing window.
That's a big plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've been doing market research with laryngologists, the doctors who treat RRP.
Okay.
And they say there's a lot of interest in a non-surgical option.
That makes sense.
Yeah, especially one that has, such a high rate of significant benefit.
Right.
They said that a 50% complete response rate and an 80% plus rate of surgery reduction, those were seen as really compelling numbers.
Wow. So they're clearly getting positive feedback from the folks who would actually be prescribing this drug.
Yeah. And they're also well underway with their commercial launch preparations. They're working on their distribution strategy, identifying partners, they're figuring out their pricing strategy, and they've already done the work on targeting, segmentation, product positioning.
So they're really checking all the boxes.
Yeah, they are. And they're expecting that they'll only need a relatively small and efficient field force.
Okay.
Because the RRP market is pretty concentrated.
Right.
Most of the patients are treated by a relatively small number of laryngologists. And they've also been talking to payers to get their feedback on pricing. And it sounds like they're open to typical rare disease pricing.
Okay. They
even referenced OG-CIBO, which has a price of around $360,000 a year.
Right.
So they discussed a potential price range for INO 3107 of anywhere from $200,000 to $2 million per year.
Wow. So that's quite a range.
Yeah, it is. But I think it just reflects the fact that this is a really, really high unmet need.
Right. And there aren't a lot of other options out there. All right. So let's move on to some of their other pipeline developments.
Yeah.
Because, Anovio is not a one-trick pony.
Right.
They've got a lot of other interesting stuff in the works. And one of the things they talked about was their DNA-encoded monoclonal antibodies, DMs.
Yeah, DMs.
Which, for folks who aren't familiar, this is a really cutting-edge technology.
It is. It's really cool stuff.
So give us the highlights there.
So they presented some interim results from a phase 1 trial of DMAbs targeting SARS-CoV-2. And the data showed that these antibodies were produced in humans in vivo for up to 72 weeks.
So the body is actually producing the antibodies itself.
Exactly. Yeah. And at biologically relevant levels, too.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And there was no sign of any anti-drug antibodies or immune rejection.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the treatment was well tolerated. The most common side effects were just mild temporary reactions at the injection site. And the antibodies that were produced, they actually showed functional activity against the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein.
So they're actually working as intended.
Yeah, they are. And this is potentially a huge deal.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Because it overcomes a lot of the challenges that we have with traditional monoclonal antibodies.
Right.
Those are expensive to manufacture. They're difficult to store. They can be hard to administer.
Right.
But with DMAbs, you're basically getting the body to do all the work for you.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really, really exciting technology. And they're not just focusing on SARS-CoV-2.
Okay.
They're also looking at preclinical applications in flu, HIV, cancer.
A whole range of different diseases.
Yeah, the potential here is really broad. They're going to be presenting more clinical data at conferences in the first half of the year.
Okay.
And they've also got a manuscript available as a preprint.
Okay, so we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, this is one to watch for sure. And just to give you a little more detail on how it works, the DMs are injected into the deltoid muscle.
Okay.
And then the antibodies are produced within the muscle cells and secreted into the bloodstream.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And they're even exploring ways to control antibody expression using different promoters.
Oh, wow.
So you could, potentially turn antibody production on or off as needed.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's really futuristic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what else is going on in the pipeline?
Right.
Well, they're continuing to develop their DNA-launched nanoparticle candidates, the DLNPs.
Okay.
Those are for infectious diseases.
Right.
And they're also working on their DNA-encoded protein replacement candidates, or DPROTs.
Okay.
Those are for diseases caused by missing or defective proteins.
Got it.
And they're also moving forward with plans for a phase 3 trial of INO 300-112.
Okay.
This is in combination with low-Q or UNO-C for local regionally advanced high-risk HPV-16 and 18 positive throat cancer.
Okay.
And they're having discussions with the FDA and European regulators about the trial design.
Got it.
And then finally, they're also talking about a phase 2 trial of INO 5401 in newly diagnosed glioblastoma.
Okay, so they've got a lot of irons in the fire, as they say.
Yeah, they do.
All right, so let's touch on the financials one more time.
Sure.
We talked about their cash runway, but anything else we should know about their financial position?
Yeah, they raised over $72 million in gross proceeds last year.
Okay.
Through equity offerings and ATM sales.
Okay.
They said they expect their operational net cash burn for Q1 2025 to be about $27 million.
Okay.
Which is historically higher than other quarters.
Okay.
But as we said, their cash runway should last into Q1 of 2026.
Right.
But that's not including any potential future capital raises.
Right, of course. All right, so as we wrap up here, what are the key takeaways for investors from this earnings call?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that they finally resolved those Selectra manufacturing issues, and they've got a clear timeline now for the INO 3107 DLA submission. So that's a big de-risking event.
Right.
And then the long-term durability data for INO 3107 is also really encouraging.
Yeah.
It really looks like this could be a game changer for RRP patients.
Right.
And they're making good progress on the commercialization front.
Yeah.
They've talked to payers. They're getting good feedback. So, assuming they get approval, I think they're well positioned for a successful launch.
Okay. So a lot to be optimistic about there.
Yeah, I think so.
And then, of course, you've got the DM platform, which is just incredibly exciting.
Yeah, that's the wild card here. I mean,
Right.
the potential there is just enormous.
Right. It could really be transformative.
It really could.
All right. So before we go, it's time for our This Is Not Financial Advice segment.
Right.
Where we throw out some outrageous but plausible trade ideas.
Always fun.
Yeah, based on what we've learned today. So what do you got?
Well, based on, the data we've seen for INO 3107
Okay.
and the enthusiasm from the laryngologists,
Right.
I think a plausible trade here would be to go long Anovio.
Okay.
With, maybe an 18-month horizon.
Okay.
Betting on that BLA approval.
Okay. So basically you're saying, buy the stock now.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, in 18 months when the drug is approved, the stock price will have gone up.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, given the unmet need here.
Right.
And the lack of other treatment options.
Right.
I think there's a good chance that that this drug could be a big success.
Okay. So that's one idea.
Right.
What's another one?
Well, for the more adventurous investor,
yeah.
I'd say, maybe consider a pairs trade where you go long Anovio. Okay. And then you short a smaller, less innovative antibody manufacturer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So the idea here is that, if Anovio's DM technology really takes off,
right,
it could disrupt the whole monoclonal antibody market.
Right.
And those smaller companies that are, still relying on the old technology, they could really struggle.
Right. So you're betting on Anovio to be the disruptor.
Exactly.
The innovator.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those are some interesting ideas.
Yeah. Just remember, this is not financial advice.
Of course. Of course.
Do your own research.
Always do your own research.
Talk to your financial advisor.
Don't just listen to two guys on a podcast. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Anovio Pharmaceuticals' fourth quarter 2024 earnings call. I hope you found it informative.
Me too.
As always, we encourage you to do your own research
Absolutely.
and come to your own conclusions.
Yeah.
But we hope we've given you some food for thought.
Yeah, we've definitely covered a lot of ground today.
We have. And we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. What do you think about Anovio's prospects?
So join the conversation, leave us a comment, send us an email, however you want to get in touch.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.